from the Mercy One studio. Man Up, brought to you by Construction Professionals, a program dedicated to inspiring and helping men live lives of heroic virtue. Join Joe Stopulos every Monday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on Iowa Catholic Radio. And now, it's time to Man Up.
Welcome to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. We are broadcasting from the Mercy One studio, heard on 1150 AM, 88.5 FM, 94.5 FM. Around the globe, streaming online at iowacatholicradio.com and on the Iowa Catholic Radio app. I am Joe Stopulos, and on today's show, it's part 2 of the interview I did with Dr. Bud Marr a few weeks ago on the uncommon good. Today's episode will be around a lot of things. Most importantly, Dr. Martin Luther King and his legacy in America, and then also the anniversary of Roe versus Wade and the issue of abortion in America. Let's start in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. If you heard last week's episode, you understand that I was invited, actually on Inauguration Day 2 weeks ago, to join the Uncommon Good, to join Bud Marr, and to take Bo Bonner's place that day as co-host, and discuss the three major topics of that week, which were, first off, the Monday was the anniversary of the day we celebrate Martin Luther King Day, and then Wednesday was the inauguration of Joe Biden as president, and Friday was the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. So three very important dates in the American political calendar. And so we kind of took an episode to talk about all those things and the dynamics of being Christians in America and what that means. Today's episode was more around what we celebrated that Friday. Celebrated, I shouldn't say. We remembered that Friday, which is the Roe versus Wade anniversary, the horror of that day, and what we can do to turn the tide on it. So today's episode is going to be a lot on the conversation of abortion. And our call, as you know, if you listen to my show back in October, you know my thoughts well and clear on this issue and how we as Christians need to stand up. We need to take the mantle and bring it back and take over the culture and help them understand that this is not a women's choice. This is not a positive good, but this is an evil that needs to be rid of in the culture today. So stick around. We're going to head to a short break, and the second part of the interview from 2 weeks ago with Bud Marr will be right back.
Thank you, Construction Professionals, for underwriting Man Up. Construction Professionals have been long supporters of Iowa Catholic Radio, and we've seen their work firsthand. It's very impressive. They do remodeling or new construction that is innovative, functional, and designing what you want. CPCustomHomes.com.
At Golden Rule Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, our number one rule is the Golden Rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And there's no better time than now to be living it. This year has been one for the record books, and the hits just keep on coming. So at Golden Rule, we are doing what we can to help out yet again. Introducing our Golden Age Buyback Program. As your HVAC system reached the golden years of life, we will give you up to $1,500 to have it replaced. Everyone deserves the Golden Rule, and this is one way Golden Rule gives back to you. Go to goldenrulephc.com.
Thank you to Bozen the Florist for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio, Dowling Catholic Football, and Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo.
What better way to send a message to a friend or a loved one than a beautiful bouquet of fresh-cut flowers? Hey, this is Tom Bozen from Bozen the Florist. Our family business has been helping Central Iowans send messages locally and around the world for almost 100 years. Whatever the occasion, whatever the message, we can help you say more with Bozen. That's 244-ROSE, 244-7673, or visit us at bozen.com.
My help comes from you. You're right here.
The American Experience and MLK. Joe, at the end of the last segment, I mentioned that mountaintop speech. Jimmy says Sideshow Bud. He's behind that idea. I mentioned that mountaintop speech, and this one it's a really fascinating speech, Joe, because Martin Luther King Jr. gave this on the night before he was killed. And what stands out to me, I've shown this to students, is he seemed to have a real premonition that he was up against, his life was going to be cut short. And he says at one point in the speech, longevity is to be sought. Like any person, he desires a long life, but there are things that are more important than just extending your life indefinitely. And to me, Joe, the heart of the speech, And I think what really applies to what we're talking about today is this one paragraph. And pardon me, listeners, I'm just going to read this paragraph because I think it's essential to what we have to say in the second half of the show. But as by way of context, there were certain injunctions passed in the American South to try to prevent MLK from advancing the civil rights movement at the time. And basically this was sort of like, look, you've got your cause, but we can't have you blocking bridges or assembling in the streets, et cetera, et cetera. And here's what King Jr. had to say. Now, about injunctions, we have an injunction and we're going into court tomorrow morning to fight this illegal, unconstitutional injunction. All that we have to say to America is be true to what you've said on paper. If I lived in China or even in Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they hadn't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read the greatness of America's the right to protest for rights. And so just as I say, we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around. We aren't going to let any injunction turn us around either. We're marching on. And Joe, I obviously can't deliver that with the same aplomb and rhetorical force that King himself did. But what I hear there is reminiscent of the Old Testament prophets, where King Jr., as a pastor, is reaching back to America's history and back to who it claimed to be at its foundation and saying, look, this is what you have on paper. This is what it says for Americans in the Constitution, for Catholics in their Bible. You know, how are we doing? How are we living up to who we claim to be? And you hear echoes of really Frederick Douglass, who says, you know, like your celebrations on the 4th of July, they sound different to free persons than they do to slaves. And that's not okay. And so neither one of these two was hating on America. They had stirring words about America as a country and its calling, but they did call us to live to a higher plane.
That got me really fired up. And that was even with your delivery, which again, I thought, those words are just, they're stirring. And MLK is just, there's a reason we hold him in such high regard, obviously. And one of the things I reflect upon when we talk about just the uncommon good and we talk about the Catholic Church today and the Christian movement today and trying to regain the culture, Frederick Douglass, MLK, Lincoln, Washington, these great heroes of ours, these are the people who, these pillars of ours in society, they were fed first and foremost at church. These were men of faith. These are men of devout faith. And this came from the church, came from the pulpit. All these movements came from there. What worries me is what the future looks like. When we see movements in society today, they're not coming from the church. They're coming from some sort of civic organization. They're not coming from a place of a fear of God, first and foremost. And I think the reason, obviously, King was so successful, the reason he was able to do what he was able to do was because he, first and foremost, was fed by God, and he was, first and foremost, understanding of God's role and how this is more important than country, is God first. He understood that, and so did the people he was talking with, and he could unite it. My worry is that we lack a lot of that today. We lack a lot of just the fertile ground that we had at the time. And so I think that's, our call as Catholic Christians is to help till the ground, till the soil, and get it back to the point where we are ready to receive these messages and that our future leaders are open and being able to talk openly about the providence of God and how that needs to be as Americans, the most important thing is our relationship with God, which King clearly understood in his writings. I'm all fired up now. That was really good.
Well, I know Bo, he sang like a dirge on your show once, or like some sort of sea shanty or something, which I could never pull off. But
yeah, and I won't ever do that. I will never forget that moment when Father Zach and I could not stop laughing. We couldn't stop laughing.
Folks, speaking of podcasts, you got to find this old episode, and maybe I can search it up for you and highlight it on Twitter for everyone who wants a truly entertaining experience. But more seriously, Joe. When you were talking there, what came to mind for me is sometimes on the show, Bo and I talk about how different important words can be used equivocally. That means with different meanings. And we do that not just to be nerds or to show to our parents that all their money wasn't wasted sending us to college, but it can sort of clear the playing field. And I think with this discussion, this is huge because you think about the term rights and human beings having rights. And as Christians, as Catholics, we say, of course, God created each human being in his own image, and therefore they have these kind of rights that can't be violated. But I feel, Joe, like in our context, that term has gone off the rails a bit. And I think about the way that people use rights. And you know what? I'm just going to come out a little bit harder here, guns blazing. But especially, this month where we remember in a special way the pro-life cause and remember the anniversary of Roe v. Wade and what's taken place since that time. In conversations with students or with friends, I sometimes hear the term rights used in really unfortunate ways. And you think about something like even a Supreme Court ruling where the highest justices in the land said a woman has a right to privacy, which therefore undergirds the right to kill the child in her womb. And Joe, that's where as Catholics we have to seek to purify our language and as much as possible witness to true rights. And so, like, for instance, with this cause, we have to remind people that when someone says, like, I have a right to my own body, I can get an abortion if I want to, we have to remind them that there's not simply one body involved. There's two bodies. And that's not to downplay the difficulties that many women face in their pregnancies. That's not to downplay the ways that we maybe fall short as a society or community in supporting those women. But, Joe, I think really one cause that we can be prophetic about in our time is this question of abortion.
Yeah, it is. It's something that I've always been. I've always been on the side of life, clearly, and I've gotten to the point now where I'm so nauseated, quite frankly, by the support that I see out there now. In the '90s, it was a safe, legal, and rare, right? That was kind of the tagline for the pro-abortion movement. Understanding then that if it's safe and legal, okay, that's fine, but rare would have some sort of connotation that they don't want this, right? So if it was a good thing, if like eating your vegetables, you wouldn't say safe, legal, and rare because you want people to eat their vegetables because it's good. So safe, legal, and often. But you'd say rare because it's probably not something you want to have done. Well, why don't we want to have done? So that was the 90s, and as sad as that was, I would long for the days where people were at least open to the idea that we want rare, because now, there's literally a shout your abortion movement. There are people, Twitter's the cesspool of the world. I get that. I understand that we shouldn't be using Twitter to show an actual snapshot of America, but you'll see things of people putting, I just got an abortion, take a picture of themselves, put it on Facebook and Instagram, and it's demonic. It clearly is demonic. And that's where I think we as Christians need to get to this point where we're taking back the culture. Politics is downstream from culture. And so all this stuff is flowing, this dirty garbage is flowing from a river up north of us, and it's bad. It's toxic culture that is pushing that this stuff is good, it's okay, it's a positive good. And it's gotten to the point now where I'm so sick of all of it that, yeah, as you can tell from my voice, I did a show. If your listeners want to, I get pretty high. It's probably the most heated I've ever been on my show. But back in October, I did a why I can't even vote pro-choice, and I made the connection between, and I stay out of politics completely on my show. I just try to avoid it like the plague. But it's gotten to the point now where the idea of if my candidate who I love, let's say there's a 100% Catholic candidate, this guy checks every Catholic box 100% of the time, good person, family person, all the et cetera, but they were pro-choice. I couldn't even do it. I've gotten to the point now that would be like them saying, "Hey, listen, I'm 100% Catholic 100% of the time, but I'm okay with slavery, even if I'm personally against slavery. Like I would never own a slave, I would never have an abortion, but I'm okay with it." Like I'm now to the point where it's gotten so much for me because of how far the movement swung the other way. Now you have all these people talking about the positive good of abortion, and when you hear the stories and when you learn about what an abortion entails, how against God's nature that is. The most beautiful thing, obviously, we've had 5 kids now, and when you see the ultrasounds, when you hear the heartbeat, when you understand what this little tiny baby turns into, and to end that it's sickening. But the reason for hope, or the reason I think we need to take it back, is there's a few different things we need to do. This is the year of St. Joseph. I don't know if you guys talked about it in the show yet. Pope Francis has ordained this the year of St. Joseph. We need fathers. Yeah. The uncommon good. You talk about what we need for the common good
Yeah.
is fathers. We need the family unit back. And this year, St. Joseph, if we want to stop the plague of abortion, if we want to encourage families, it starts with fathers. I go through the statistics ad nauseum of what of A, the stats in general today for lack of fathers, and then B, what that means to the kids. And that's what we need to do. We need to reclaim the family. And in doing that, that'll solve a lot of the problems with abortion. People will be less likely to want them if we've got a father in the house, if we've got stable incomes, et cetera, et cetera. I'm rambling. I'm hot. You got me all fired up now.
Well, in all seriousness, Joe, that's what I really do appreciate about your show, Man Up, and just this show specifically dedicated on Iowa Catholic Radio to calling Catholic men to be more faithful and to model themselves after St. Joseph. Because one thing that's really tough for me with this issue, I'll be honest, is that it's so heartbreaking and mind-boggling to think about what's taken place in our country since Roe v. Wade has been legalized. On the other hand, Joe, it's something that's really pushed to the margins, and you can go about your life, and I'm guilty of this as anyone, checking social media on your phone, watching Iowa State lose football games, vegging on just binge watching Netflix or whatever. And there's this great injustice that's around us, and you can kind of live this comfortable existence and out of sight, out of mind. And this, Joe, so if you know, like you and I are friends, you know me, I'm pretty non-confrontational. And, in terms of like the show itself, Bo is like
I was going to say, your co-host is a little bit different.
He likes a good argument, to put it mildly. But, Joe, I feel like this is one area in social life where we have to be brave, always with love and gentleness, but willing to make people uncomfortable. And that starts in our own life. Like, we have to ask ourselves, I think, to say, like, how heartbroken am I by this reality? St. Mother Teresa, she reminded us that if you can take a life in the womb, then we shouldn't be surprised by other forms of violence. And you want to think about, like, the coarsening of language and relationships in our culture. It starts with this kind of utilitarian perspective that if someone, doesn't measure up to a certain level of reason or whatever, they're discardable. I think, Pope Francis has done a great job talking about the throwaway culture. And that's characterized not only by abortion, but by how we treat the elderly, how we treat the poor, etc. But we have to have, Joe, I feel like our hearts broken personally, and that can begin with fasting for this cause, with marching for this cause. But sometimes I think uncomfortable conversations when the time is right.
I think you're 100% on, and I will give you a real-life example of this. It's my wife, Kristen, who you also know as not a very confrontational person. She
has schooled me on the soccer pitch, really embarrassed me.
She gets on the soccer pitch, and that's different, though. That's a sporting competition. A little different. Confrontations on the sporting fields are different than confrontations in real life. So she is, extraordinarily kind and patient, and if we're talking, so this is a perfect example. It's kind of the same thing with you and Bo. I'm going to tell you and Bo are like me and my wife. Okay, so he will welcome a conversation on economics and on political theories and all these things. And
that's right.
My wife will check out of all of it. She has opinions. She has opinions on all these things. And if she's at a group of, let's say there's a table of 8 of us, and she knows, I don't know, 1 or 2 of them. She could know all of them. She could know none of them. It does not matter. And nobody, they could talk politics all day and religion and all the things, and she'll opine when she feels like she needs to opine. If somebody brings up that they're for abortion, or that abortion's a good or a positive good, or anything like this at all, she will come out of her very nice, genteel shell and be very, very assertive to you and telling you why that's wrong. And so that's a good example of she's done. She's done with allowing people who have never been, first off, they probably have never been told. Maybe they've just never seen the other side of it. And that's another thing that we've got to understand as an evangelical church. We used to have to go to Africa to find people who've never heard the gospel. There are people in your neighborhood who have never heard the gospel. They've never understood what it is that we actually believe. And I believe that's the case with now the pro-life cause as well. People just they're not, in my office, if somebody, I've had this happen. People have said, oh yeah, I'm totally, and I'll just say, okay, good. And I'm not going to bash them over the face with it. But I am going to walk them through systematically why I believe that is a wrong decision. And we have to, as Christians, be armed, similarly like we do with the gospel. St. Peter says we always have to be ready, armed and ready to go to give our defense of the gospel. Same thing on things like this, on the life issue. We have to be able to articulate to people who otherwise maybe not have heard it and stand up, as you pointed out. If somebody wants to tell me about their tax policy and the way that they want to run the country with all, that's fine. I'm okay. I might opine, possibly, but if someone's going to talk about abortion in a positive good that abortion is for society, I am going to confront that. I don't know if I'm going to change their mind, but I'm going to do it in a tactful manner as best as possible and explain to them why I think that's not the case. So I think you're right on as far as how we as Christians need to stand up to this and start to change the tide in the culture.
Well, and I know we just have a few minutes left, but I feel like I have to give sort of a unfun warning. This is not a rosy message to hear too early in the morning, but Joe, and feel free to qualify what I have to say here. I feel like we're coming up against a time where to take a stand on behalf of life, both life in the womb, the lives of the disabled, the lives of the elderly. The temperature is going to be turned up on Catholics. And what I have in mind, I want to kind of avoid the weeds of what we're passing through right now, but I do think you see this kind of idea that if you vote a certain way or if you hold certain principles, then you're sort of a threat to peace. And I think this gets employed against Catholics in certain ways. So I just want to say, to our listeners, be absolutely rooted in prayer and in the study of God, and ask for graces each day to love well, but also to speak the truth clearly and the truth lovingly. I don't know.
No,
I think you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I will say we listen to a lot of saint stories in the car with the kids, the glory stories, and we listen to them all the time. And one of them is on Jose Sanchez del Rio, from the Cristero movement in the early 1900s. And I used to listen to these as history, as these were things that happened in the past. Starting now in January, during Exodus 90, I tend to read at least one or two books on the gulags, on the concentration camps. And I used to read this through the lens of, well, this is things that happened in the past in other countries, in faraway lands that are, these are now, I'm looking as models of things that might actually happen here. Jose Sanchez del Rio and all the Cristeros, they stood up for their faith. They were kicked out of church. They did not care. There's underground churches. They received Eucharist, and they stood up, dying, saying, Viva Cristo Rey. That is something that, God forbid, I sure hope doesn't happen in our country, but you can see with the cancel culture becoming more pervasive and the Catholic Church holding to traditional values on things like life, you could see where this might happen. And so to your point, your suggestion was we've got to be rooted in prayer. We've got to be ready to go. I agree 100%. My wife and I have, now when we're talking about the kids, we're saying, listen, I never thought of martyrdom, whether it's white or red, as far as my life in America, our quiet, cozy life in America. But you can see that 70 years from now, my kids will in their 70s. This is clearly could be the case. And so we're preparing them for that. We understand that. But regardless of that, it's our call as Christians, as Catholics, to wake up every morning, get on our knees, and figure out what the Lord's call is in our life. What are we called to? Well, we're called to develop a relationship with Him, a fear of God, a healthy fear of God, and also to develop prudence. I pray every day for prudence. I pray that I may have the wisdom to know what it is that I'm supposed to do, and then have the fortitude to go along with it. So I just think all of these things, as the pressure, as you said, the temperature gets turned up, that's just more for us to go back and sharpen our swords even more in prayer. And then we'll know, through prayer, through fasting, we'll know what God's call is for us. But that is incumbent upon us to do that.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the morning is provided by Five Sons Naturescapes. Five Sons Naturescapes is a Catholic veteran-owned family company providing premium outdoor landscaping. Clean up and restore outdoor living space with retaining walls, privacy fencing, pergolas, paver sidewalks, and patios. Issues with soil settling and water around the foundation and yard? 5 Cents Naturescapes can grade and install drainage tile to help. 5 Cents Naturescapes online at 5centsnaturescapes.com.
My help comes from you. You're right here.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. My thanks again to Bud Marr and Bo Bonner for having me on The Uncommon Good. A great podcast, great show. Please subscribe to them. Follow what they're doing. Really great. Again, highly intellectual, both those guys. Well-studied. Lots of letters after their name. Doctorates, the whole 9 yards. Things you might lack on this show. Possibly lack on this show. But two good friends of mine. Great stuff that they're doing over there. Today is February 1st. In the liturgical calendar, with the Catholic Church, every month has a different celebration, different thing that we celebrate, we remember throughout the month. This month is the Holy Family. February 2021 is the Holy Family. So this whole year is the year of St. Joseph, as Pope Francis called it, year of St. Joseph. So I hope you are all, I'll do an episode at some point here on St. Joseph, pretty soon probably, on just what he means to me, what we can do to learn from him. But as I even mentioned in the interview with Bud, the importance of the family. How if we were able to bring the family unit back as the central point of society, the building block on which we build society, things like poverty, things like abortion would start to go away. They wouldn't be as prevalent. There wouldn't be the quote-unquote need, or at least the demand. I say quote-unquote. There's never a need for an abortion. But the demand for someone to even think about it. If we had a stable family, if we had a father and a mother in the house, we wouldn't have this demand for it. People wouldn't be thinking about it. If you had a father and mother in a house, the financial stability would be better in the house. The importance of the Holy Family, what we can do to learn from them, how they oriented their entire lives around God. They did everything they could in reference to God. They were 100% obedient to God's will in their life, and that's the model that we are all to follow. We are all to follow the model of the Holy Family. So this month of February, I just encourage you to pray to the Holy Family, to study the Holy Family, to model what they did in your own family. Help to use them as the model of your motherhood, of your fatherhood, whatever it is, and that we may be more like them. Thank you again for joining me today on Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. I am Joe Stopulos. It's time to man up.
Man Up, inspiring men to live out their call to holiness with Joe Stopulos. Heard Mondays at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on Iowa Catholic Radio. Brought to you by Construction Professionals.